Hi everyone. You're listening now for Champions Podcast. So joining us today is for Alvanson with then 10 years of experience from being a recruitment consultant, and now he is the lead of Canva Philippines. So Mr. Vanson, thank you for us today for this episode, and we're really excited to have you here.
Thanks, Abigail. Just wanted to flag, maybe want to redo it because you were choppy a little bit.
Okay.
So,
Choppy
medyo
yung
nag-choppy
mic.
ka.
Okay.
So baka
Okay.
na-record yung choppiness. So, ano lang. Well, you can cut it naman. So, you can cut na lang the
Yes,
choppy.
yes. I can edit it out naman po. How
Okay.
about this now? Is
Yeah,
this
ngayon
better?
better. Yeah, ngayon better. Yeah. So, yeah. Let's redo the intro.
Yeah, let me redo the intro. Okay. Hi everyone. You're listening to the HR Champions podcast. Joining us today is Mr. Alvanson So, with more than 10 years of experience from IT recruitment consultant, and now he is the regional people lead of Canva Philippines. Mr. Vanson, thank you for joining us today for this episode. We're really excited to have you here.
Thanks, Abigail. Happy to be here.
Okay. So let me start with my first question. So, Mr. Vanson, you've been working in HR for more than a decade now. Can you share with us ano yung nag-inspire po sa inyo to start working in HR?
So I started not in HR specifically. So back in school, I was a computer science graduate. So
Mm,
at that time, I was actually trying to be an educator, a lecturer, or a teacher. So the
mm-mm,
specialization I chose, despite having a computer science degree, was focused on instructional design, so e-learning.
okay.
But then when I graduated,
Mm,
the industry did not offer too many opportunities to apply the e-learning
yes.
degree. But still wanted to be a teacher. I went back to school. So I actually spent almost 8 years in college. So I took another degree, which is human resources. And then this is
Mm-mm,
where I have sort of invested all of my time in. But to answer your question, I wanted to train, I wanted to teach, but I also wanted to
mm-mm,
have a career um, that has the opportunity to make a difference, like and somehow change people's lives. That's why I started in
mm-mm.
recruitment. I could offer people better
Yeah.
jobs.
Yeah. Actually, I also graduated as computer science. So maybe kumbaga yung grad kumbaga yung passion talaga yung nagde-drive sa tao, eh, kung paano yung magiging journey niya all throughout dun sa life niya. So, in years of your experience, Mr. Vanson, ano yung naging biggest challenge mo as an HR leader po?
I think it applies to whatever role you have within the HR space, right? It's really balancing the needs of your employees and the
Mm,
company, because oftentimes they sit on opposite sides of the spectrum.
mm,
Like what the company wants is quite different from the employee wants, and the employee sentiments are also quite different from the
mm,
organization. So being in HR, we are tasked to sit right in the middle, being able to
mm,
balance perspectives, be the company's spokesperson, but also be the
mm,
employee's champion, right? So we we need to be able to strike that healthy balance so that people would
mm,
trust HR, but then the business would also rely on our
mm.
guidance, our counsel, no, and strategies.
Yes. And also, Mr. Vanson, actually, most of our guests sa podcast na to, they also see yung biggest issue na nakita nila internally is the employee attrition. Can you share your thoughts about employee attrition din po?
My general take on when we talk about attrition is that there is equal value, or there's a lot of value in looking at
Mm-mm.
reasons of people to leave. But I also
Mm-mm.
think there's also equal amount of opportunities to invest on reasons for them to stay, right?
Mm-mm.
So and definitely, take everything with a grain of salt. There's a lot of reasons why people decide to move on, from better
Mm-mm.
career opportunities or better pay, better
Yes.
training, or they've moved on to a different country, or maybe even shift careers, right? But
Yes.
I think,
Changes is a constant thing po din talaga.
hmm, yeah.
Mm.
And
Mm.
apart from classifying these departures as like regrettable or
Mm.
non-regrettable or desired, non-desired, depending on what the language is of organizations, right? But I think a
Mm.
good question to ask is like, when a person leaves, was it something that
Mm.
we could have prevented or something that we could not have prevented? And if we see
Mm.
reasons are leaning more towards areas where we could have been able to prevent the departure, that is where I
Mm.
think HR should spend more time understanding and studying what can we do so that create more compelling reasons for people to stay and leave.
Mm. Since you mentioned po yung kumbaga what we can do to make them stay, ever since COVID po kasi 'di ba, there's a lot of changes that happen, not only in people's life but also in business aspects. So, may napansin po rin ba kayong mga changes in the way companies motivates and do employee engagement?
Definitely, I mean, we cannot simply adopt the same styles and techniques
Mm.
pre-COVID to
Yes.
this post-COVID world, right?
Yes.
With the advent of hybrid work, people being able to work from home. Some companies
Mm.
even are able to hire people that they've never met, right? They hire people
Mm.
else. So we are confronted with now a third type of distance. So first, before we only had geographic distance, right? Like so
Mm.
we don't some people live far, some people live close. So you have your
Yes. Mm.
geographic distance. And then the
Mm.
second
Kasi
is
most of yung naging ano na rin kasi setup ngayon is the work from home setup, which is the very trend setup or the hybrid. So, yung iba umuwi ng province para dun na lang
yeah,
sila mag-work instead of renting another house here. So, yun yung mga kumbaga nagiging virtual world na rin tayo eh. So most of our guests are also saying that they're doing employee engagement virtually na rin. So they use Zoom, or if they will be given a chance, they will just do small gathering para at least magkakilanlan kasi iba pa rin yung face to face face to face interaction with other colleagues, or especially pag may mga bagong hired na mga sa team. So, it's better to have face to face, pero siguro because of the COVID pandemic, we learned to do a lot of things digitally, and we're also going digital into digital world like cashless and something like that. So, during your career po, ano yung mga notable changes na nakita mo in the HR industry?
um I'm sure there has been a lot of shifts, like from the way we hire. I think we just take a look at the key moments in the employee life cycle.
Mm.
Um, when it comes to hiring, for example, before it is the employees or the candidates that line up to companies for a job. Right now, we're
Mm.
slowly shifting into realities where companies actually line up on candidates because they now candidates now have a wider spectrum of
Mm.
choice, like you want to work for, right?
Mm.
Before, people are forced before to apply for jobs or to companies that are close to them. Right now with hybrid,
Mm-mm.
you have access to different employers, even to
Yes.
companies that are not in the Philippines, right? So ang pumipila na ngayon is hindi na yung kumpanya yung pinipilahan, yung kandidato na yung pinipilahan because then
Mm-mm.
people are competing with hiring. I was
Yes.
alluding to this a while ago. As far as engagement is concerned, right? We spoke about geographic distance, but you also speak
Mm-mm.
about team dynamics distance. Like people don't know who they work with anymore, right? So
Mm-mm.
how do you bring teams together? How do you improve team dynamics, ways of working, operating models? How do you
Mm-mm.
improve that? And people tend to now work in silos behind Zoom screens. Like hindi na tayo
Yes.
magkakakilala.
Mm-mm.
Even even in engagement, the third distance would be the affinity distance. Yung affinity mo or yung closeness mo to the company. Like, if
Mm-mm.
you ask employees these days, especially those that were hired in the pandemic, you ask them what are their company corporate values, they might not be able to
Yes.
tell you because they don't associate with the company so much because they're not in the company. They're not under the same roof. They don't experience the culture
Mm-mm.
because they're just in their homes, in their houses, locked in their rooms, in
Mm-mm.
their remotely. So yung connection is not there. So how we build engagement activities will also have to be more deliberate, more intentional, more inclusive, right?
Mm-mm.
Speaking of inclusivity, the the attention companies now put around diversity, equality, and inclusion, and now they're now calling it that belonging, that sense of belonging, is something that is more profound these days compared to, let's say, 10 years ago. Like, we don't even have to talk about pre pandemic, like, just the focus
Yes.
on recognizing people's differences. No?
Mm-mm.
Also, I guess, of course, training are now held differently. It's more driven online, right? So you lose the
Mm-mm.
social learning. It's more of formal and in the job. Nawala na yung social learning masyado.
Yes.
And then even as far as benefits administration is concerned, like before, benefits were more geared towards um, uh, monetary, compensation driven benefits.
Yes.
Right
Compensation. Yeah.
right now
Mm-mm.
we're seeing some emphasis on that, but then we are seeing a slow shift in investing benefits around well-being, right? Because
Mm-mm.
burnout, mental health, we're seeing
Mental health
companies.
is really on trend right now.
Yeah, so yun. So every aspect or every stage in a person's journey as an employee has been impacted in some shape or form, right? After
Mm-mm.
emerging from the pandemic. So our methods have changed, our approaches have changed, where we invest and where we divest also have changed. The
Mm-mm.
way we also set goals are also quite different these days because you can't manage people like how we did it in the past where kita mo kung
Mm-mm.
nagtatrabaho sila, right? So right now when
Mm-mm.
people are working from home, you're not really sure. But then you
Yes.
you
Mm-mm.
trust them, right? You have to
So
trust them and you
it's
have to
kind of
make
hard
it.
to monitor na yung productivity, especially working from home or hybrid. So hindi mo alam kung they're really focusing in their job or not.
Yeah. So it's things like that. I think that we have to be more sensitive and aware. If
Mm-mm.
we are to be able to create an HR team or an HR ways of working that will help propel companies beyond the pandemic.
Mm-mm. So, since you mentioned this changes po, na-mention niyo rin kanina yung as an HR leader, there's a different method na on how you set your goals. So, kayo Sir Vanson, how do you set your goals right now po?
So every organization might have a different take on it, right? But
Mm-mm.
what, for example, we do is that we have foundational or no fail goals as an organization, and this trickles down to team goals, and then team goals get translated into personal goals, and then we add
Yes.
growth goals as well, so that people
Mm-mm.
don't just end up focusing only on the job, but they also focus on how to get better at their jobs, right? So
Mm-mm.
by combining all of these different layers in goal design, we are able to elevate, people's accountability. We are
Mm-mm.
also able to champion autonomy, because then people are able to set their own goals, right? Guided by, of course,
Mm-mm.
our foundational no fail goals. Injecting growth goals also give people that sense of empowerment, that they're not
Mm.
expected to just keep doing what they do. And the expectation rather
Mm-mm.
is for them to develop more skills and improve their work, so that they can move on to do other
Mm-mm.
things. So, and that in combination creates an environment where are are people feel that what they do matters. The
Yes.
company trusts that they're able to do good work, and then we couple it
Mm-mm.
with appropriate rewards and recognition frameworks, because of course people always want to be recognized for good work, right? So it's
Yes.
really being able to strike that harmony between setting ambitious crazy goals, give them the
Mm-mm.
support and the implement needed, and of course then recognize and reward and recognize them for the good work that they do.
Mm-mm. Um, Usually kasi ngayon parang recognition is really a must kasi it brings employee value. So if I'm an employee and I was recognized and given a reward from my company, parang may satisfaction factor din kasi bilang an employee. So siguro yun yung naging ano yung pinaka key point para sa mga companies din ngayon on how they will motivate and keep your employees engaged and also it will also lead into greater productivity then. So for my last question, Mr. Vanson, para sa ating mga younger listeners who wants to start or grow their careers in HR, meron po ba kayong mai-share na mga tips or advice for them?
um, I would essentially encourage people who would like to explore the HR field, is to first perhaps do a very a very honest self-reflection, right? Because
Mm.
setting up a career in HR is not for everybody, right? Like
Mm.
it is the
It's a
kind
tough
of job.
job.
Apart from it being a tough job, I think every job can be tough, right? In their own
Yeah. Mm-mm.
respects. But I think that what we deal with is something that is unlike any other craft. Like an
Mm-mm.
accountant would deal with cash, or an architect
Mm.
would deal with resources and design, and
Mm-mm.
chefs would deal with cuisines and
Mm-mm.
the diner experience. For us, we deal with people, and every
Yes.
person is different, right? And so you would have the
Mm.
appetite to navigate change, recognize that
Mm-mm.
people are different. Like you have to be able to choose and be agile and not get stuck on certain ways of working, because the 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 I would say the audience of your work, which is employees, change,
Mm-mm.
and so you will have to be adaptable to that change as well. So if this is a space, or this is an area where you do not feel very comfortable in, try your best to
Mm-mm.
before you go into HR. Right?
Okay. Thank you for sharing this that aspiring advice or tips for our younger listeners. So and also thank you for saying yes to our invitation for this podcast, Mr. Vanson. It has been an absolute pleasure to have you here, and I personally learned a lot. So dun sa mga na-share niyo pong tips kanina. And I'm sure also yung mga listeners natin would learn a lot as well. So if some of our listeners have questions for you, what is the best way for them to contact you, sir?
I'm quite active in LinkedIn, so I'm happy to accept connections and PMs.
Mm-mm.
Like if you're keen to discuss matters, I'm very much very
Mm-mm.
accommodating in that
Yes.
channel. So feel free to connect.
Okay. Okay. Any last few words for our guest, for our listeners, Mr. Vanson?
Where whatever you do, right? Like whether you're in HR today or you're thinking about going to HR or you're leaving HR, right? I think um, what I really would like to share is that uh, if you're looking for a meaningful career, right? A
Mm-mm.
job that is rewarding both intrinsically, like for you, like to keep your hearts full, and also
Mm-mm.
be given the opportunity to make a difference. I would
Mm-mm.
really encourage you to explore the world of HR. Um,
Mm-mm.
and also, and also, I think there's a lot of really brilliant HR professionals in the industry, particularly in
Mm-mm.
our country. So I also encourage you
Yes.
guys to connect with these folks via LinkedIn and pick their brains and follow their posts. There's a lot of things to learn from them, right? So yeah.
Okay. Thank you again, Mr. Vanson. So, guys, has been the HR Champions podcast. See you on the next episode. Thanks again, Mr. Vanson.
Thanks, Abby. Happy to have shared the afternoon with you.
Okay.